Was surprised by the number of things going on between the United States and Mexico that weren't part of the official political agenda. I spent a lot of time working on U.S.-Mexico politics and the official, issues that the presidents talk about and Congresses talk about. And I realized that all the exciting stuff was going on outside those official channels. It was happening in business, it was happening in culture, in the arts, in sports. And I wanted to write about that. And I started to collect stories and realized that in that there was a book. And it really starts with the opening story of the book about Hazleton going from a city that was dealing with immigration pressures to becoming a recipient of Mexican investment. But then I kept finding other stories that just fit this idea that this is a really complex relationship, and it's, the political relationships change, but the actual tendency of New Mexico and the U.S. is to keep growing stronger together. The story of the airport, of how San Diego finally decided, instead of building a new airport, which they wanted to do, to actually team up with Tijuana and just build a bridge to the Tijuana airport, which is on the other side of the border, and share an airport together, was a great story also. And it's nice symbolism because it's sort of it's a bridge over the wall. At a time we've been talking about, wall on the border, they actually went ahead and built a bridge. And San Diego is an interesting border town because it's the least Mexican of all the border towns, right? It is the, still the most distant border town. It's a large city. It's fairly affluent. It's still majority white or more, or at least more white than Latino, different than most other border cities. And yet, for really pragmatic reasons, they came to terms with the fact that they really needed to work together with Tijuana. In a lot of border cities that happens because there are people with families on both sides of the border, but here it was business. It was just something that made sense for both sides. Yeah, I think what keeps the two countries together is bloodless, and it's economic, right? I mean, it really is pragmatic, and that's okay. Saying it's bloodless isn't a bad thing. I mean, it really is. The foundations are economics. The foundations of our lives are economics, right? And the basic level of Maslow's hierarchy, right, is survival, right? And then it is a bit of flourishing, and then you get into the higher, the higher sphere of human realization. And I think that's how it is in relationships as well between countries. And so at a real foundational level, it's economic. But the higher you go up, the more we get to know each other, the more, cultural interactions matter, right? The more that getting to know each other, that actually knowing something, knowing that the film you just saw and enjoyed is actually made by a Mexican director or has a touch of something about Mexico, or vice versa. Mexico, is American, or trying Mexican food that is really artistic, and realizing your street taco can also turn into a really complex creation in a high level restaurant. Or it can be just a great street taco, right? I mean, these sort of things that bring Mexican cultural life into Americans' daily life, I think, matters. And vice versa for Mexicans with the U.S. I mean, those are the things that begin to shorten the cultural distance. But the foundations really are economic. So I'm hopeful. If you ask me in the medium to long term, I'm hopeful. I think we will get around to dealing with immigration reform. I think it will be tough, sensible, and humane. Hopefully, when we do it, it will be do something for people that are here already, and think about how we have sensible future flows and how we know who comes into the country. In the short term, we're going to muddle through for a bit, and I think hopefully we will get to a point where even as we're muddling through, we do it with respect for people's dignity.